The National Desk, America's News, now.
Pro-Palestinian protests grow around the country a week after they started at Columbia University. What one lawmaker says he wants President Biden to do.
This isn't just about abortion. This is about a protection, a life-saving protection we've had in place that keeps any person, including our pregnant patients who come to the emergency room, safe.
Abortion back before the Supreme Court as one state makes a move to end its near-complete abortion ban. And more Americans are turning to themselves and their loved ones instead of doctors when it comes to their health. What's driving a lack of trust in institutions? And you're looking at the campus of the University of Austin in Texas, where police arrested a protest organizer after calling for disbursement of a demonstration against the war in Gaza. This as we track another active protest at USC and several other schools across the country. Student demonstrations tonight popping up coast to coast. Many of them happening in solidarity with students at Columbia University in New York who were just given 48 hours to leave their encampment on the university's lawn or be subject to removal. Demonstrators first descended on the lawn last Wednesday to protest Israel's bombardment of Gaza and to rebuke the university's ongoing financial investments in Israel. Those protests expanded when over 100 demonstrators were arrested and students were suspended. The demonstrators have been largely peaceful, but the crackdown followed accusations that some protesters were engaging in anti-Semitic harassment. House Speaker Mike Johnson meeting today with Jewish students at the New York City-based college to discuss what he called a troubling rise of anti-Semitism.
Neither Israel nor these Jewish students on this campus will ever stand alone.
Johnson also said he would urge President Biden to take executive action, such as calling in the National Guard. Right now, the New York governor has said she has no plans to deploy the group. The Arizona House has passed a bill that would repeal the state's near-total abortion ban. 3 Republicans joined the Democrats to advance that measure today. The Arizona Supreme Court's decision earlier this month to reinstate the Civil War-era ban was met with outrage. If the law is repealed, the state would go back to its previous 15-week ban. Meanwhile, abortion is back before the Supreme Court. The High Court heard arguments today on whether state bans on abortions during medical emergencies, in this case Idaho's, conflicts with federal health care law.
So there will be some women who present serious medical condition that the federal law would require to be treated, who will not be treated under Idaho law.
No, I disagree with that.
I guess I don't really understand why we have to address the stabilizing condition if what you say is that nobody has been able to identify a conflict.
The justices expressed concern over a woman's ability to get emergency care in the state, but didn't seem swayed by the Biden administration's argument that they can't get that care. A ruling is expected in June. And tomorrow, the justices will hear arguments over whether Donald Trump or any former president is immune from prosecution for actions taken during their time in office. National correspondent Atral Nashar has a preview on this groundbreaking historical case.
Former President Trump bringing his untested legal claim to the Supreme Court that all presidents must have complete and total presidential immunity, or the authority and decisiveness of a president of the United States will be stripped and gone forever. According to special counsel Jack Smith, Trump's actions toward the end of his presidency amount to conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction and conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy to prevent others from carrying out their constitutional rights.
The president has a unique constitutional role, but he is not above the law.
Trump's lawyers say a president can only be prosecuted if Congress indicts and convicts him.
To authorize the prosecution of a president for his official acts would open a Pandora's box from which this nation may never recover.
The top Republican in the Senate said quite the opposite after the impeachment trial in February 2021, shortly after Trump left office.
Impeachment was never meant to be the final forum
for American justice. President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office.
The lower courts rejected Trump's argument, and many legal scholars expect the Supreme Court to do the same. But the justices could go further.
Instead of asking if presidents have absolute immunity from prosecution, they're now asking whether and to what extent. It's likely that the court will use this case to carve out a broader precedent.
When the court releases its decision is almost as crucial as the decision itself.
It's very likely we wouldn't see a decision until the very end of the term, think the end of June. And so if the court was to send it back down to a lower court, it's highly unlikely that we would see a trial before the November election.
Now, if the Supreme Court dismisses Trump's immunity claim and does not send it back to the lower courts, the special counsel's team could get their case back up and running right away. But even then, they'd be on a very tight timeline to get it in front of a jury before Americans vote in November.
And Atra, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, she's speaking out about the timing of all of this. What is she saying?
Yeah, the former Congresswoman, who you'll recall served on the January 6th committee, writes in a New York Times op-ed that the special counsel's team was able to obtain evidence that the committee was not, like testimony from key members of the Trump White House. And Cheney says that testimony is likely to remain secret until it's presented at trial. So her fear is if the case is delayed past the election and Trump is elected president, well, he could order his DOJ to dismiss the criminal charges against him. She writes, the Supreme Court should understand this reality and conclude without delay that no immunity applies here.
Tricky business there, that's for sure. Atra Al-Nashar live from Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you, as always. A Tennessee bill allowing teachers and staff to carry concealed handguns in schools now on the governor's desk. The controversial measure drew protesters to the state's capitol before lawmakers approved it. It comes in the wake of a deadly shooting that happened last year at a Christian school. Parents demanded action, but many wanted gun restrictions, not more guns on campus. Lawmakers argue it will protect students and could act as a deterrent. A new rule announced today. Airlines will soon have to give automatic cash refunds to passengers for flight cancellations and significant delays. It'll go into effect in 6 months. The delays have to be more than 3 hours for domestic flights and 6 hours for international flights. Secretary Pete Buttigieg announced a rule as well to protect passengers from those fees that are ticking up.
These charges can really add up for things like a checked bag, a carry-on bag, change fees, cancellation fees.
Now he says you'll have to have full transparency before you book your flight. And meals served at schools will soon have to comply with newly announced rules from the Department of Agriculture. The new standards limit added sugars to no more than 10% of the total calories for breakfast and lunch each week. This requirement is expected to take effect in the 2025-26 school year. Officials have also proposed to reduce sodium by almost 30% over the next few years. The FDA, meantime, says it has detected bird flu virus particles in milk at grocery stores. Now, so far, the agency says the milk is safe to drink. The particles were detected by highly sensitive lab tests and were likely remnants of viruses that were killed during the pasteurization process. Officials say the particles can't infect people, but they're still testing to make sure. The city of Baltimore attempting to give its abandoned home front an inexpensive facelift. The Department of Housing and Community Development now listing hundreds of more than 13,000 vacant homes in the city for just, get this, $1. To qualify, applicants need to prove that they have at least $90,000 in the bank. They'll also have to renovate the home within a year and live there for the next 5 years. There is some concern that the program lacks strategies that were implemented in a similar buyout initiative in the 1970s.
According to data that my office put together, since the 1990s, there are 420 properties that have been sold by the city that are still vacant. So I do have concerns that if somebody bids on or gets the property through this process and then doesn't do anything with it, what ends up happening?
So far, 101 city residents have applied, but 45 of them were immediately deemed ineligible. Applications will still be taken until the end of July. And coming up, when you can expect a possible TikTok ban to go into effect under a new law. just signed today. Then car insurance rates are soaring. What experts recommend you do before purchasing a plan. Later, teen violence at National Harbor in Maryland disrupting the community. What officials are now doing to stop it. And a live look over D.C., where President Joe Biden has signed into law the $95 billion foreign aid package that passed out of the House this weekend and through the Senate last night, with $60 billion for Ukraine, $26 billion for both Israel and the Palestinian territories, and another $9 billion for Taiwan. President Biden says this bill is still about protecting America.
And it's an investment in our own security. Because when our allies are stronger, and I want to make this point again and again, when our allies are stronger, we are stronger.
But what is also in this new law is the directive for ByteDance, the owner of the social media app TikTok, to sell ownership to a United States-based company, or TikTok will be banned in the United States. But don't expect the ban to happen anytime soon. As written, ByteDance has 270 days to find a partner, which gives them until at least January of 2025. If ByteDance is making significant progress in making a sale, they could get another 90 days to complete the transaction. ByteDance has already indicated they will sue, keeping any penalty from being enacted until the courts decide if the law is constitutional. In the ongoing war in Gaza, reports that top Israeli and Egyptian officials are secretly meeting to discuss the controversial invasion into Rafah as Israel signals that it plans an offensive on the city very soon. Egyptian officials concerned tonight that an Israeli operation in the southern Gaza city that shares a border with Egypt would potentially endanger Egypt's security, and have warned it could put its peace agreement with Israel into question. Israel says it must enter Rafah to try and rescue hostages it believes are still there. And that includes Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland. Today, Hamas releasing a seemingly recent video of the 23-year-old hostage, angrily asking the Israeli government to bring him and the many others who are there home. He claimed in the video that 70 detainees had been killed in Israeli strikes. The war in Gaza and rising tensions in the Middle East, part of the discussions between U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and senior Chinese officials, as Blinken begins his trip in Shanghai and is soon headed for Beijing. During the three-day trip, only his second official visit as Secretary of State, Blinken is hoping to strengthen dialogue that helps stabilize a rocky bilateral relationship. He's also expected to press China to stop its firms from retooling and resupplying Russia's war efforts. A new watchdog report raises concerns one of the largest companies is meddling in American politics. Here's national correspondent Kayla Gaskins with more.
In an increasingly digital world, many Americans get their news online. handing immense power to those who control the content users get to see. A newly published study conducted by the conservative watchdog group MRC Free Speech America, tallying up 39 times Facebook interfered with U.S. elections since 2012. We spoke with one of the authors of the report, Dan Schneider.
Basically, 98% of the firepower is directed to conservatives. There are instances where Facebook is taking down liberals, but typically those liberals are either in opposition to Joe Biden, like RFK Jr., or else they're in opposition to Facebook itself.
The first account of meddling goes back to the weeks before the 2012 presidential election. Facebook suspending the account of a veteran-run PAC after the group made posts criticizing the Obama administration for the deaths of 4 Americans in Benghazi.
And so Facebook meddled, and it really should be considered a twofer, trying to help Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton at the same time.
Facebook officials later called the removal an error, not an act of censorship. Other examples trace through the 2016, 2018, 2020 elections to present day. During this time, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg adamantly maintained the company's commitment to free speech.
The ability to speak freely has been central to the fight for democracy worldwide.
Schneider says recently, however, the platform does appear to be censoring much less.
In the last 2 years, we've seen Facebook censor far less than they had in 2020. My hope is that Facebook really is turning over a new leaf. We need improvements out of Facebook. We need to see an actual platform that promotes free speech and allows real, vibrant discussions and debates. That's what American democracy is based on.
We reached out to Meta. Representatives with the tech company say they have no comment on the recent report. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Pennsylvania voters may have made their voice heard yesterday by who they did not vote for in their presidential primary. Nikki Haley, who is still on the ballot despite suspending her campaign, received nearly 157,000 votes, nearly 17% across the state, and as much as 25% in the counties surrounding Philadelphia. This as Donald Trump faces severe legal troubles. Biden, on the other hand, who's been facing a protest vote of his own across the country, lost about 7%, almost 70,000 votes, to challenger Dean Phillips. Pennsylvania does not have an uncommitted option like we've seen in other states. New Jersey Representative Donald Payne Jr. passed away at the age of 65. His office says he was hospitalized 2 weeks ago after being unconscious from heart complications stemming from his diabetes. Congressman Payne was first elected to the House in 2012 following the death of his father, former Congressman Donald Payne Sr., who also died in office. With his absence in Congress, the current breakdown looks a little bit like this. Republicans holding a slim 6 votes, 218 to 212, leading with 5 vacancies. Republican Mike Gallagher had said he would resign last week, but he has not officially done so. New York will hold a special election next Tuesday, meantime, to fill the seat vacated by Democrat Brian Higgins. Rising car insurance rates, they are straining car owners and driving inflation. The Associated Press says rates were up 2.6% in March and 22% higher than where we were just a year ago. The increase was driven by higher car prices and repair costs. Insurance rate increases won't necessarily fall as fast as broader inflation. Experts suggest getting at least 3 different quotes before buying insurance. A 54-year-old New Jersey woman has become the first person ever to receive a mechanical heart pump and a gene-edited pig kidney. Lisa Pisano had heart failure and end-stage kidney disease. She got the surgery at NYU Langone Health after doctors ruled out regular transplants due to complications and an organ shortage. The hospital says Pisano is recovering well. A new survey shows people are losing confidence in health institutions and are trusting themselves and their friends and family more when it comes to making health decisions. The National Desk's Janae Bowens has a closer look at the results.
Lamont Mitchell was diagnosed with stage 3 prostate cancer.
I studied 2 or 3 hours every day on prostate cancer, what the treatments are, what happens when you do this. How's the side effects?
He learned as much as he could and worked with doctors.
But it can be dangerous if you're the only person you're listening to.
But not everyone agrees. The new Global Edelman Trust Barometer survey shows fears about the politicization of medical science has increased by 13 points in the past year to 64%.
We're seeing less trust in institutions such as scientific and health agencies.
Dr. Anand Parekh, chief medical advisor for the Bipartisan Policy Center, says it's good to see 2 in 3 people feeling confident making decisions about their health, sorting out bad health info from good, and raising concerns with their doctors. But he admits the back and forth about how to respond to COVID-19 has led some people to be more skeptical of major institutions.
I think we need to more clearly describe what we know and what we don't know, and be honest with the American public in terms of that. And so I am concerned that the next time there'll be less people tuning in. There really shouldn't be, anything, frankly, political about this. This should be about science and your health.
Mitchell agrees, and with the help of his medical team, he's beating cancer and finished his treatments last month. He has this advice for everyone.
Become a partner in their healthcare, but not the sole partner.
The survey revealed overall people have a great amount of trust in their doctor's advice, but some say they wouldn't trust their doctor or would get rid of them if they didn't have the same political or social views. I'm Janae Bowens reporting.
Coming up, 2 kids are finally coming home after being stranded in Mexico, what an expert is urging people to do to avoid that kind of nightmare. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Seven News sharing this exclusive video yesterday of one of many incidents Saturday at National Harbor. Hundreds of teens congregating, fighting, screaming, and according to witnesses, stealing. Now, new video of one of the eruptions of violence. A close-up look at a crowd of mostly girls surrounding and seemingly cheering on a fight. Residents telling us it happens too often, and Saturday was one too many times. 7 News has learned from multiple sources. County Executive Angela Alsobrooks will later this week announce an emergency order banning unaccompanied minors from National Harbor from 5 p.m. to 6 a.m. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night.
I would rather spend the extra money and have that peace of mind knowing that if there's ever an issue, I can get back into the country. Also, I use that same philosophy when it comes to insurance. You're investing a little bit of money, but protecting a much larger investment, knowing that if there's ever a problem, you can take care of it.
2 Rhode Island children stuck in Mexico now on their way back home. Mother Sarah Martin says she is heading down to Florida to reunite with her children after a spring break trip gone wrong. The kids were stranded for several days after their grandmother suffered a medical emergency on a cruise. Neither of the children had passports, leaving Martin with limited options. Mike Spramuli with Captain Cruz, and Cruz said the family's unfortunate situation should serve as a lesson. He said he always encourages his clients to get their passports, even if the cruise line doesn't require it.
If Texas is going to be able to get energy to all of its residents, current and future in the state, ERCOT says there's going to have to be some changes. Today, ERCOT, which oversees Texas's electrical grid, unveiled what it's calling a new era of planning that, as they put it, would adapt and plan differently to meet future electricity demand.
So I think we can respond quickly enough to be able to incorporate and adapt to the pace of growth.
In a presentation today, ERCOT President Pablo Vegas noted that they've now had to increase their projected energy demand, known as loads, by 40,000 megawatts compared to last year. As he said in his presentation, the forecasted pace of load growth could exceed the pace at which transmission capacity can be built to support it. Put differently, Texas is on track to potentially not have enough energy to meet the needs of a growing state.
Former USC running back Reggie Bush is officially a Heisman Trophy winner once again. The Heisman Trophy Trust decided to reinstate Bush as the 2005 winner 14 years after he was stripped of that honor because the NCAA said he received improper financial benefits as a player. Under a new NCAA rule, college athletes can receive compensation for their name, image, and likeness, leading the Heisman Trophy Trust to say now was the time to return the Heisman to Bush. Very exciting. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching and have a great night.